Hello there. I'm Rob Hudson. I'm a member of the law firm Frost Brown Todd, and I'm one of the volunteers with the Northern Kentucky Bar Association. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our NKBA Legends series. In this series, we interview distinguished Northern Kentucky Greater Cincinnati lawyers. We hope to help elevate the profession with a particular focus on what it takes to succeed as an attorney, both personally and professionally. Today's program will be recorded and it'll be made available to help guide the next generations of lawyers in our region. For live attendees, be sure to post your questions on the Q&A or chat features, and I'll ask them at the end of the program. Today is really a great day for our series because we're joined by Sheryl Heeter. In Northern Kentucky, we've been very fortunate to have Sheryl as part of our bar for more than 30 years. She joined one of Kentucky's largest firms out of law school. She then helped form the firm Wasson, Braden, Heeter, and King. She became a sole practitioner at one point in her career, served as a contract public defender in Campbell County, worked as a first assistant Commonwealth attorney. And in this age of specialization, Sheryl truly excelled in all forms of litigation, civil, criminal defense, and prosecution. Not surprisingly, she's also dedicated herself to serving the legal community. She served as the NKBA treasurer, chair of the Judiciary Committee, chair of the Lex Loci editorial committee, and she also held leadership posts in the Salmon P. Chase Inn of Court and with the Kentucky Bar Association. Sheryl, welcome and thank you for being part of the Legends program.
Thank you, Rob, and I'm happy to share my words of wisdom with everybody, and thank you again for your kind words.
Yeah, as long as I don't call you a legend again, right?
There's
yes, almost all of the lawyers we've interviewed have been a little, reticent or uncomfortable with the idea of being a legend, but we have selected interviewees for this program based on backgrounds and achievements, and like it or not, Sheryl, you're a legend. So thank you for joining us again. And we always start these programs we kind of start at the beginning and talk about some early influences, and your family, I know, played a remarkable, amazing role in providing a foundation and groundwork for your legal career. If you could share with us different aspects of that helped you along the way.
Sure. I can say that my father instilled in me the work ethic. He was raised on a farm. He had his own business, and he made it very clear that when you commit to something, you commit to it fully, and you do it the best you can. And I worked for him for about 6 years, and every day I went into work, I just knew if he looked at me a certain way, I was not quite living up to what he thought was the best performance. So he really instilled that in me as far as work ethic. My mother, on the other hand, did more of the compassion and volunteering. She had us volunteering, I think, starting at age 8. We'd go out in the community and volunteer. So that kind of instilled in me the importance of giving back to your community at an early age. Also, my mother had us try everything. She had us dance, hunting, fishing, music, swimming, whatever it was. She said, try it, just try these things. You might like it, you might not. So got to give her a lot of credit to not being afraid to try something.
Well, that's a crucial skill as a lawyer. If if you're not always pushing and stretching, you're not going to grow the way you need to grow. So that's a great combination to have the work ethic piece and then the creativity and community service piece.
Yes. Yeah. So I had great parents, and they're still alive, thankfully, and get to see them every month. And then one more thing I think it was important that my mom instilled in me. She always hated people who gossiped. Now, I'm not saying that I don't gossip, but she could not stand it in the neighborhood when people gossiped. And she always said, Cheryl, you need to be sure that you know the facts before you repeat anything you hear. So I think that was pretty critical to my legal career, is better know the facts.
Yeah, be right. Get your facts, and also, when you speak, make sure you have credibility, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I know you and I have known each other for a while. So, and I had known a little bit about your background, but I love your career path to prior to law school. How you figured out that you were gonna end up going to law school, and one of the parts of the program with the Legend Series is we want all of the newer, younger lawyers or people who are considering a legal career to know there's so many different paths to get to the practice of law, so many different options, and I thought yours was interesting. So if you can tell our viewers and attendees about your path to get there to law school, that'd be terrific.
I was a undergrad. I was Spanish and Latin American Studies major. And when I got out of school, when I graduated, the Social Security Administration had positions for people who spoke Spanish on the south side of Chicago. And I'm from Northern Indiana originally. So I took one of those positions with Social Security. And I think I was very fortunate to work there because it made law school a lot easier for me. Because Social Security was basically based on rules and regulations. And I took applications, when I first started there, I took applications for people that were filing for retirement or survivor's benefits or disability. So you had to know what they had to do to qualify. You had to help people establish things as basic as their age. I worked on the south side of Chicago, late 70s, early 80s, and people didn't have birth certificates. A lot of people were from the south and moved up north. So we had to go out there, look for the census records, look for baptism records, look for school records. So I learned a lot about, developing facts to fit the rules to help people qualify. And so it is pretty much like the IRAC method. Here's the rule, what kind of facts do you need to get, and what's your conclusion? Do they qualify? So when I went to law school, it was kind of easy there at first. So that's Social Security. It helped you interview people to kind of get the story and go forward. So I was very fortunate. And
then you end up in Northern Kentucky in law school. Thank goodness for all of us. And so your first opportunity is at Greenbaum, and you may have had some clerkships and other experiences in law school too, but those first few years are so important for mentoring and influences. If you could take a moment to share with us some of your key influences and mentors early on.
Okay, well, early on, I was fortunate to land an internship with Greenbaum, Dahl & McDonald. They had just opened up their Northern Kentucky firm or office. And there were only 5 attorneys there. So while I might have interviewed with a lot of large firms like Frost or Taft or Dinsmore, what really appealed to me about Greenbaum at the time was there were 5 attorneys. So it was like a small firm, but with that big firm support all over the state. So Bill Robinson was there and Roger Brady. And both of those individuals mentored me in different ways. I can say that Bill Robinson, what he instilled in me was the importance of volunteering for the legal community. He right off the bat said I should do cases for legal aid. I should do pro bono divorce work. Even though I'm in a big firm that needs billable hours, he's saying, no, you need to take the time, you need to do your service to the public. He also had me do criminal.
Well, and also get your billable hours in.
Well, you have to, yeah.
Right.
Right. So yes, you have these high aspirations, but also get your billable hours. That was one thing I learned too, is how to make sure I wrote down my time. When you have a small practice, you need to keep track of your time and bill. So also did some criminal defense work. Had me do some it was starting out to be a public defender system, but it wasn't quite. Bob Karen ran it, and he would just go in court and represent mainly misdemeanors at that time. And so he encouraged me to do that and to get trial practice. So I credit Bill with that part of my development. Then you have Roger Braden. He's the one I think that really taught me how to practice law. He taught me compassion. For people that know Roger, he does a lot of plaintiff's work. He's the nicest attorney out there. I have the most respect for him. And he pushed me to do things. Here, question this witness at trial, take this deposition. And he taught me a great skill. I thought he had a really good skill, is he knew how to set up the opposing party or the opposing expert and work them into a corner, and then he'd ask that zinger of a question at the end, that just really worked for his clients. So that's a lot of my skill set came from Roger.
Well, were there factors that led you to a particular practice area, which obviously became litigation?
I guess I just liked fighting for a side. I would not be a good judge. I think it's easy to advocate for. I enjoy advocating for people. So I think that's why litigation appealed to me, and I liked arguing according to my parents. So I think that all combined for litigation. I did not want to do wills. I did not want to do trust. Paperwork bored me. So courtroom appealed to me.
Well, you ended up briefing. You ended up writing a lot, though, too,
yeah.
as part of that. But as long as it's in the advocacy mode, that was appealing to.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
One, and you had, after Greenbaum, you had several kind of moves to different size firms, different types of practices. If you could kind of take us through your career progression and maybe share with us a few of the pivotal events as you were striving to become proficient, as you were learning, because I guess you started out mostly in civil, but then things changed.
Yes. Well, working at a large firm, plus it was a second career for me. So the large firm structure, when you're in your late 30s, is a little bit, I don't know. I guess I was more set on doing things my way at that point in time, and had a great opportunity with Roger Braden, and then Don Wasson, who was a CPA JD, and then Kevin King, who was a workers' comp expert. We created a small partnership, and that really helped me learn about the administration on a small scale, your billing, your marketing, your budgeting. So I had a great opportunity. I was in a big firm, met a lot of people, got involved in a lot of big cases, and then I went to a smaller firm and I learned more about managing a law practice, but with other people around me. I wasn't one of these that went out and hung my shingle right away. I got to give everybody credit that gets out there and hangs their shingle, because that to me is a little scary. So Wasson, Braden, Heeter, and King dissolved. Don Wasson was dying of cancer. And Kevin King, workers' comp, the whole system changed, and Kevin King got appointed as an arbitrator. So I had a choice. I could go back to a larger firm, or go out on my own. And being the older, want to be in control person, I decided this is my opportunity. I have enough people that I know, and enough referrals probably to do well or good enough. And so I went out, decided to go out on my own. And in doing so, I ended up running space. Jim Morgan, I guess, owned most of the buildings that I worked in. But I also had the opportunity, good friend Ruth Jackson, we practiced together. We're not partners, but we shared office space. We could talk to each other about our cases. Ruth has a ton of experience in family law. And so it was good for us. We kind of helped each other practice, and being able to get in with somebody that you respect, that has a good work ethic as well, it really does a lot for you. And so if you're going out there and you're hanging your shingle out, you really need to look at who you're going to be doing that with. And I do want to give Ruth credit. She's the one that really hammered into me, do your billing. It's the end of the month, do your billing. You don't get paid out of your retainers until you do your billing. And me, I'd be going, oh, I could do that tomorrow. I'm just like, no, you need to do it now. And she was right. She helped me with that because that's probably a weakness I had as a sole practitioner. And she also hammered in the fact, get a retainer. And when it goes down to 0 or almost 0, you get more retainer. You do not bill monthly. Yes. That doesn't work out as well.
Well, so as you were developing competency, and Sheryl, I don't know, it's probably hard as a practitioner to understand and appreciate how much you are respected by your peers, and how people speak of you in the highest terms, in regards to practice proficiency and professionalism. If you could take a minute to pass along either some of your experiences or pointers about how to develop practice proficiency and practice excellence. What influenced you, or what you observed, or what you experienced that pushed you to another level. Because I know I'm going to embarrass you, but you sure did get there, and it didn't take you that long either.
Well, thank you. But I think probably really what pushed me was being involved in jury trials. What made me more proficient was going through that whole process, preparing for getting evidence and going to a jury. And you got to see the end result of all the work you did. And it made you realize how important that deposition was, or how important it was communicating with someone. So that really pushed me to know what I was doing and be prepared. At a trial, there's no question you have to be prepared. And I'm probably a fanatic and overdo it compared to everybody else as far as trial prep. But I think having a trial, or whether or not you're in domestic relations and you just have a bench trial, it's the same thing. I think having those, instead of settling everything, it's best to settle for your client in most cases, especially when you're pushed to where you can't settle a case and you go to trial. I think that's how you learn. At least for me, that really hit home, like, maybe you should have done something a little different when you were taking that deposition, or maybe it would have been good to get these documents. So that really helped me learn.
And we haven't covered your criminal practice yet as well. So let's talk about how did you first get involved? I've always been in the civil world. I've never been in the criminal world, and I wouldn't even know how to get into that world with the practice of law. How did it happen for you, and what was kind of your progression there?
Well, I can tell you, when I thought about being a lawyer when I was younger, I was probably 15 or 16 thinking about it, and it was always to defend people that had been criminally charged. I lived in a very small community. The police force kind of drew its attention to certain groups of kids, and they always seemed to get in trouble, and they seemed to get kicked out of school. And I always thought it was unfair what happened to these people. So I was always interested in the criminal law perspective. Of course, a lot of my friends, were charged with that. Just help my friends and family now. But that, as I mentioned, Bill Robinson got me involved first with Bob Karen, doing a little bit of it. And then I did when Mary Refusaday had the Kenton County Public Defender System. I volunteered to do some conflict work. So I had my private practice, and I was doing conflict work. Now, it doesn't pay very much, but you get a lot of experience. You work hard for people. For the most part, they're appreciative. So I did more of that. And then Campbell County, back before the state public defender system, Campbell County had an independent contractor public defender system where they had so many public defenders and they paid them so much a month as independent contractors. And then at the end of the year, all the public defender fees that went into Campbell County got distributed to us as a bonus. So I got to do a lot of trial work then, and I enjoyed it. As many people may know, I ended up shutting down my practice in 2012 and became a full-time Commonwealth attorney because I think I enjoyed criminal law probably better than any other aspect of practicing law. But yeah, criminal law is fun. And so I had one trial, I'll say it was a success, even though it was a hung jury. I had an individual that was accused of first-degree robbery, and he confessed, and he was ID'd by somebody, and I got a hung jury. So at that time, Lou Ball was a Commonwealth attorney, and Jack Porter was his first assistant. And Jack would say, "Hey, you want to work? You got an opening. You want to work?" And I'm like, "Nah." And then another opening. "You want to work?" And then finally, I'm like, "Yeah, I want to see what does the prosecutor know that I don't know? What are the secrets they have back there?" So I wanted to try that aspect of it. And,
but a key element is just think back on your career, and what if you hadn't said yes when you were invited to participate in something that may not have changed your life financially, but you were willing to say yes, and it all worked out. Yeah.
Yeah, so that philosophy of my mother, try it. You might like it, So, and I enjoyed it. And plus that office, I'll say the Campbell County Commonwealth Attorney's Office was pretty, they gave you a lot of control over your own cases. After Lou left, Lou presented everything to the grand jury, but when Jack took over, we did a lot of presentation of our own cases, and we didn't have pressure. Resolve this, do this, because I know that we did not have any of that pressure. So I could also say I don't want to do certain types of cases because I didn't feel strongly about them as a prosecutor, so I shouldn't be assigned those cases, and there was flexibility that we could do that.
Were there any, as your practice developed, were there any particular big disappointments? And not to make this a negative interview, but any big disappointments, and if you had them, how'd you move past them?
Well, I can say disappointments were as a Commonwealth, as an assistant Commonwealth attorney, I ended up focusing in the area of child sex abuse cases. So when I got a not guilty verdict in those cases, that was my biggest disappointment, because you had a child there that you had to explain to that, it wasn't you, the jury believed you. It's just, I did not have enough evidence to convince them. So I always tried to think of some way to tell children that they weren't at fault, because the jury, came back not guilty. They all think, well, they think I was lying about this. And so I always felt very bad about that, when that would happen. So it was not their fault. It was my fault for not really getting the evidence out there, or just looking at it when you look back on things, how to get past those not guilties was to say, you know what, these are the facts. In this case, I didn't create the facts. This child did not voluntarily create the facts, but the facts are what they are. And, the jury, based on those facts, could not find guilt. And that's what I think we have to tell ourselves when we do have a bad outcome. Otherwise, you're going to dwell on it, and it's hard to move forward from that. And you don't want to do that because you got so many other people that you want to help. So I would say, remember, it's the facts that create the situation. You didn't create those facts. You did the best, as long as you did the best you could, and tried to show the facts in the most favorable light. You did what you could, and so you need to move forward. Still upsetting, still disappointing, but you need to focus on that so you can move forward.
Well, and you mentioned your hung jury earlier when your client had confessed. Mm-hmm. But were there, and if you care to talk about that more, that's great. But are there other big successes, things that stand out? And by the way, I love the fact that when we talk about successes and disappointments, for you, it relates to cases and clients, particular matters. You know, for another lawyer, it might be, oh, well, then when this firm closed or when this happened and, you know, at this particular part of my practice. But for you, it seems like it's about the clients, which I think speaks highly. But this is not about Rob Hudson. It's about Sheryl. What are there other successes that are part of your story?
Well, I remember there is one that I represented one individual for her Social Security disability, and she was awarded disability. And during that process, her longtime partner died, and she didn't have very much money. And they lived in maybe a $40,000 house. And when he died, he left a will and he left it to her. They never got married. So I didn't charge her very much, and Ruth would be opposed to that. But I represented her because there was a will contest. His children tried to fight the will, saying he didn't sign it. And I just remember that, you know, she took care of him. He had ALS. He was bedridden. His kids were never there. She took care of him so well that I had a doctor. I talked to his primary care doctor, and he testified for her at the will contest that yes, that could be his signature. He was still able to move his hand enough, and he did that at no charge because he had been so impressed with how well she took care of him. So knowing that somebody out there, a physician, is willing to come forward for someone that he saw doing, you know, taking care of a patient of his. And in that same case, I had a practitioner, an old-time wills and trust guy, who came and testified at no charge to say, no, you don't need to do this. You don't need to take ID when someone comes in to sign the will, because the person who did the will didn't take an ID. So that was a big part of you don't know who came in and signed that. So I had the old-timer come in that was well respected, and he did this at no cost. And this is all for my client. So I'm really proud of that because we got a good result. She got the house, and she deserved that house. So I remember that case, and I still think about her.
People coming together for a good outcome, right?
Right.
Well, we turn to business development, and then after that, we'll talk about service to the profession. But you know, you've got to develop business. Business needs to come in the door, especially when you're a sole practitioner. How did that happen for you?
Well, and I was not big in community service. I was more interested in the legal community service. So how I developed my business was what we would call word of mouth, but it was mainly through other attorneys. Back in the 90s, a lot of the large firms did not have domestic relation practices. They wanted to farm that work out. They didn't want anything to do with it. So I made contacts. I had law school buddies. I had other people I knew that worked in large firms, and they would feed you their domestic relations business. And other attorneys, you just keep reminding them, go out to lunch, volunteer to do things, talk about domestic relations, give seminars, do things like that, so people remember you and they think, well, I don't think I want to do that, but I remember she gave a talk on this, or she wrote an article on this. So that's how I developed my business. And eventually it became more, clients referred other clients to me. But to get started, I mainly had to rely on other attorneys.
Well, and it sounds like a lot of what you did to develop business related to learning more and more about your area of focus and sharing that information with other lawyers in public forums and otherwise. And so as you do it that way, it's sort of faithful to your approach of service to the profession. And so I'm thinking that fit very nicely for you in terms of a particular approach. There are some people who want to go out and be the chair of the Republican or Democrat Party or something, and maybe that develops business, but you were within the wheelhouse of the law. It sounds like a lot of the time, or maybe even all the time. for your development.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know if I was as purposeful about it, or if that's just how it ended up, but yeah, that's how it worked.
Yeah. Well, in regards to community service and bar service, but well, backing up just a little bit on business development, what do you think were the keys to your success? Because the idea of being a sole practitioner for a lot of lawyers, including me, is just, well, daunting. But what do you think was a key to pulling it off? Was it a certain, was it success in the courtroom that begat more success? Was it people who were very, very happy with your work and then they referred you to others? It's one thing to try to develop work, but to become that successful at it, what do you think were the keys?
Well, I think communication. I know a lot of people would call me and say, hey, I have a friend, can you talk to him for a minute? So, and I would do it right away and be responsive. You'd have your initial consultation at no cost in a lot of cases. So I think communicating with someone, trying to just be open and forthright with them, not making promises. So when I talked to whoever it was they wanted me to talk to, I think those people would get back to the referral source, the attorney, and say, yeah, she called me back right away. She told me this, this, and this. And I would always tell them too, I go, well, the most important thing you can do is find an attorney that you feel comfortable with. Certain personalities don't work with each other. That's the first thing you have to do, is find an attorney you're comfortable with. And, I would suggest you talk to other attorneys as well before you make decisions. So I thought it was important. I didn't want people coming to me unless they really felt comfortable.
Yeah,
So
if you have a good foundation and a good relationship and you click with the client, it's going to be an easier engagement for everyone, right? Yeah.
Right.
Well, not necessarily easier, but more effective maybe. Right?
Yeah, it's easier as long as you can communicate and you can really, tell them what the facts are and the hard facts. Sometimes things aren't easy to tell someone that is a client. Tell them the negative, you're not going to win on this issue, and this is why I think you. And I say, I'm not absolutely saying you can't win, but the odds are against you. Succeeding on this particular issue. So I think that was important. So being responsive and communicating with people, I think, helped develop it, as well as, I had one case where there was an issue on de facto custodian in family law area, and I prevailed against that person being a de facto custodian, so that my client, who was the natural biological father of the two children, could have some parenting rights and not worry about someone being a de facto custodian. So fighting that legal issue I think that was fulfilling too. Now, how it ended up is, everyone shared custody because the other person had raised, the children. But I think being able to do something like that, you kind of make a name for yourself in a certain area, so you can be successful at arguing certain things, and people know your name that way as well.
Yeah. Your service to the profession. This is your opportunity to encourage all attendees and all viewers of this video to write an article for the Northern Kentucky Bar Association Lex Loci, right?
Right, absolutely. Here's what I'm going to say is, I like going to CLE, some people don't, but I always figure out I might learn something. And what the Lex Loci does, it gives you an opportunity to give people information on something they have expertise in. It gets your name out there. You may get a referral, someone that has, you write an article on employment law, and a client who they did some other type of work for goes, do you know anybody? And so writing an article, I read some of them, I'm impressed with their knowledge, and I can call them or I can refer my client to them. But being on the Lex Loci committee, I also read all the articles because we had to edit them. And I learned a lot. And it's scary out there practicing law. There's a lot you don't know. It's scary, especially when you're a sole practitioner. So being able to refer somebody and sharing that information. And plus, you're making the legal profession better. Being involved is so important because we want the legal profession to be better. We don't want to work with incompetent attorneys on the other side of us. It makes life more difficult for your client. You can't get settlements. You have to go to trial, and it costs more money because the other side's not competent. So getting out there, sharing your knowledge is so helpful for the whole profession.
How long have you served on the Lex Loci committee? A little while, right?
A long time, yes.
I'm obliged to share my first big recollection of Lex Loci. And if you remember, it was not a very fancy publication back in the day. And still, though, as a newer lawyer, the first article they published that I had written, which was I'd probably look back on it and say, oh, that's not exactly great. But I remember thinking that I had arrived, that the Lex Loci, they actually published my thing. It was wondrous. So it is a great opportunity. And eventually that kind of effort does lead to opportunities and referrals. Plus it's just fun. It's just fun to do it. But it's not, your service hasn't been just about the Lex Loci. I know you've done many other things for the profession. If you could highlight a few of them and share with us, any meaningful experiences or moments or highlights from your really career of service to the profession.
Well, I was on the Member Services Committee, and I was the chair at some point in time for the KBA. And what that opportunity gives you is, you think about the KBA, and part of me is like, it's mandatory dues. They don't do anything for me. When they should discipline someone, they don't. It's a lot of negativity, except for the Kentucky Law Update. I go, okay, I get my CLE for free once a year. But when I served on the committee, I did learn a lot more about what the KBA does. It does a ton of things for lawyers. And on the Member Services Committee, we fought to get free legal research. I'm so used to LexisNexis. That's what I was used to and what I would use. But they have Fast Case now that is for our members. Even though you have to be a member, it provides free legal research tool for you. When I was on the committee, we had AIG. I remember that insurance crisis they had and not enough funds. Well, AIG provided our life insurance. So that we spent, I don't know how many meetings and phone calls about the fact that our members, coverage. And it turned out what we had provided for members was not at risk. It was a separate part of that entity. But it's just kind of all the things that committee did and how hard they worked. Trying to put up, I don't know how successful it is really, but putting up a job board on the KBA. They have a jobs board there. I think Greenbaum, what they're called, Denton, whatever now, but they have a couple jobs on there. So I think the KBA does a lot of things. The Kentucky Lawyers Assistance Program is great out there. I make referrals to them, and they contact the people, I assume. And it's completely confidential. And I think that's important because when you see something going on and you think alcohol or drugs are involved, I think it's important that someone reaches out to these people, because you have a lot of people out there, the public, that may be contacting this lawyer, and it's a disservice to our profession, and you want to get that person help. So there are resources at the KBA that a lot of people don't realize, that I really didn't realize until I got involved with. So I think when you get involved, like with the NKBA and the KBA and in a court, you just learn so much more. You meet so many more people. I think you just make the profession a better place. And I want to work with other people that are competent and that are caring and want to be there.
Well, one of the things that for again, a newer or younger lawyer who's just getting started, the idea of getting involved, how do you do that? You'll probably say the same thing. I found it to be pretty simple. Just call and say, do you need some help? And there are literally thousands of different ways to be involved in the bar associations at the state and local level. You can call Sheryl, you can call me, you can call our wondrous executive director, Julie Jones. We will help you to get involved, and it could be one of the most rewarding aspects of your professional life. So I don't know, how did you become involved? Did you see someone at an event, and how were you apt to do this? What was your entree?
I don't know if it was starting. I know with the NKBA, I was the representative on the Legal Aid Society board. And so I think once you get involved in one aspect of volunteering, other people look to you to hey, yeah, there's somebody that might do something. She did it for them, maybe she'll do it for us.
There's somebody who's going to show up and make sense, right?
Well, hopefully make sense. I don't know, or offer a different perspective, maybe. But I think volunteering, and especially for the KBA, is fairly easy. Someone just asked me about doing something with the KBA, and I was able to look and I go, oh, well, they're the chair of that committee, I'll give them a call. Or you call them and tell them I referred you. And the KBA is always looking for volunteers. So.
Well, now we move on to professional responsibility. And if you could, as all of our legends have, and by the way, on the topic of professional responsibility, I think part of it has to do with commitment to practice excellence, and attention to detail, all of those things that what makes a great lawyer can make a terrific professionally responsible lawyer too. But can you identify some of the keys to maintaining a high level of professional responsibility and effectiveness as an attorney from your perspective?
Well, I would say a couple of things. I would say one of the most important things is to be respectful of everyone. Be respectful of the judge, opposing counsel, the opposing party. No matter what you think, you need to show, or at least treat them courteously. Maybe not or think they're respectful in any respect. Now I'm stuttering, but I think you just need to treat everyone courteously. Don't take things personally. So when you're working on professional responsibility, I guess the biggest thing I see that I criticize attorneys for is not developing the facts, like paying attention to detail, or not developing the facts, not being prepared. I guess an easy example is in the criminal arena. You would have someone come and an attorney would say, hey, this person's never been in trouble before, you should consider a lower bond. And then the judge would be looking at the packet and they'd go, well, they have 2 prior disorderly conducts and an AI. That attorney obviously did not take the time to go look at the packet and develop the facts. Don't make that representation, because that affects your credibility. And then I see some defense attorneys try to work around that. They said, my client says he has not been in any trouble before. And then the judge goes, I see these prior crimes. And so what you've done is, while you've deflected it from maybe your credibility, now your client doesn't look credible in front of the judge. So people that come to court who are not prepared, who have not taken the time to look at, you can grab the packet before you go argue your case. You can look at something. And I think professional responsibility, you have to have due diligence, and you shouldn't make representations that you cannot back up. And that would always irritate me when people did that. But I did not show my irritation. Okay, they're just trying to get along or do whatever. But when people come to court and they're not prepared and maybe they start blustering, the blustering attorney every time, just sitting there, just going, okay, waiting for them to stop blustering. And then you have to learn to respond in a factual manner and not engage with the other attorney. Do not look at the other attorney when you're in court and argue with them. Look at the judge, explain why opposing counsel is incorrect and why you should prevail on whatever the issue is. So that's part of just your professional responsibility is, again, look at the facts, develop the facts, and make sure the judge thinks you're a credible person and opposing counsel thinks you're credible, or you're not going to do very well for your clients.
Well, I think we have a fairly civil bar in Northern Kentucky. Do you think, are we on the rise or on the decline with respect to civility? Or is it about the same?
I'm going to go with the middle. It's about the same. I think we have there are certain people out there that may not be civil. I think we need to ignore social media. I've been surprised recently seeing some people I know who've been practicing a long time and things they post on social media. Just keep off social media. Don't post on social media. Because it just makes me really question when people jump on issues not legal necessarily, but on a social issue, and they don't know, again, they don't know the facts. That's something that irritates me. I'm going to say they don't know the facts. They render an opinion, then they have to delete whatever they posted because it later turns out they were totally wrong about something. So I guess that's,
well, you could generate interest through a controversial social media post, but would that be a good long-term strategy for success as a lawyer, right?
Right.
So I think that's good advice. Temper the social media presence.
Right. And I think attorneys we're a small community. You better learn to be civil to each other. And another beef or words of wisdom maybe is, return phone calls. That aggravates me to no end when people don't return phone calls. So I've always been kind of anal about that. And I would always tell my clients, if I have not called you back within 48 hours, you need to call me and make sure I got the message because I would have returned your call by then. And so that to me was a big thing. And that's part of civility to opposing counsel. You might be upset that they haven't provided discovery. You might be upset that there's just saying stupid stuff about your client. But you still need to communicate with one another and be civil about it because you're not doing your client any favors by taking an attitude.
Well, part of the big focus for our NKBA this year has been on wellness issues for attorneys. And, I've done a little bit of litigation and it's very emotional. It can be emotional, big wins, hopefully smaller losses, but it's challenging. And what were your keys to moving forward and sort of maintaining a good sense of wellness in your practice?
Well, I would say I would exercise. I think for me, getting frustration out or just trying to feel better is exercise. I don't know if I have very good wellness tips for jury trials, jury prep, because I'd be one that'd be there all night and I wouldn't eat very much. I'd force food down me. So I'm not a good example on
well, but if you hadn't focused on your fitness heading into the jury trial and that process, then you might not have fared as well. So it may be important to build ourselves up physically and mentally so that we're ready for the big challenges. I think you and I share the trial tactic of seemingly 24/7 before trial. It's the only way I've done it, and I'm not even convinced it's the very best way to. Well, Pretty sure it's not the best way to do
Yes,
things,
yes.
but it's kind of a compulsion in a sense. Hopefully a good, sort of a good compulsion, but yes, similar approaches there.
I'm
And
always jealous of people that would go out to eat, have a beer, go do other things. And I'm sort of going, I can't spare a
right,
moment.
yeah, yeah. And now this is gonna be my favorite part of your of your interview, because I know that you recently retired or semi-retired or mostly retired and maybe completely retired. But see, my theory is lawyers don't ever completely retire. But anyway, you've said this, that you're retired, I guess, from active practice.
Mhm.
But retirement is not that easy for a lot of people. So how is it going, and what are you doing with yourself?
Okay, well, it's going a lot better. I'll tell you, I thought my personality type, I would work after I retired. I shut down my private practice and then I retired from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. I thought, oh, I'm going to do something else. But I retired August 2020 during COVID. So COVID kind of changed that because I didn't want to go work anywhere else at the time. It was pre-vaccine and I was going to see my parents. I didn't want to expose them if I caught the virus. So I kind of had forced retirement where I didn't work and I couldn't, in order for the safety of my family. So that kind of forced me to clean the house, bug my husband a lot more than he thought I should. And but finally, after January, we started doing what we wanted to do, and that was traveling. So what we've been doing is we've been traveling all over. We like going to big cities. We like going to national parks. We're approaching each state in the United States. We're going to do the state. So we've seen South Dakota, North Dakota. We're about finished with Georgia, and we're going to New Mexico next. So we are just exploring and having fun. Just came back from St. Croix. So we're busy. We're spending all our retirement money as fast as we can. So I was kind of forced into not working at first, and now because I do go see my parents once a month up in northern Indiana and stay for a long, 5 days or so. I'm not going to work somewhere. I will volunteer. I will do maybe a once a year event, maybe help people expunge their criminal records. So if they have a one-time event to help people or to help, veterans, we used to have a program where you would go explain benefits. It'd be a stand down for veterans. And so I would do something like that, one-time events, not really commit to anything.
Well, you got a lot of work to do if you want to get to all 50 states.
That's
right. Yes, it's and that's yes, all new or younger lawyers out there. Yes, there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and it may involve going to all 50 states and really appreciating each and every one of them. And I think that when you and I had a little talk before this presentation, that inspired me. I would very much enjoy doing that. I don't know whether my wife Melissa would enjoy it quite as much as I would, but I'm a big ball of twine kind of guy. I'll go see anything on the yeah. I was oversharing. As we're kind of wrapping up, we've got a few more minutes, a few more questions, and let's move to. Although you've been very open, thank you, Sheryl. But is there something not widely known that people might find interesting about you?
I've thought about that. I don't know. I'm shy, basically a shy person.
And yeah, you became a litigator and helped lead organizations, right?
Right. Well, my friends know this, but I was in the air on 9/11, so we got to meet a lot of interesting, warm and friendly people in Canada when we landed in Newfoundland. Spent my junior year abroad in Spain, and too many people here don't know that Francisco Franco was still alive, one of the last dictators from World War II. And he died while I was there, so we got an extra week of vacation. It was pretty cool. Went to Portugal that week, and so yeah. So I've always liked to travel. I still like to do new things. So, but yeah, anything else about me? I don't know.
Well, how about final words of wisdom, wit, or advice for the next generation of lawyers in Northern Kentucky?
Well, I mean, I have lots of words of wisdom, maybe, or what I think is important, but I think the biggest thing is don't take anything personally. When you're practicing law, if you start taking things personally, you'll get emotionally involved. This is the same thing as when you represent clients. If you get emotionally involved, if you take on your client's emotions, say in a divorce case, you start hating the other side as much as your client does, that's a problem. Being emotionally involved is a reaction, and you don't want to be reacting. You should be planning, and you have a goal, and you have steps, and everything you do should be volitional. It shouldn't be a reaction. So I think that being passionate, you can be, and maybe I'm using the words incorrectly, but you can be passionate. When you're enthusiastic, you should be passionate about what you do. But that's different. I think you have goals, and you're making steps to get across what you want to do. But the emotion, and that goes back to taking things personally. When someone's saying something negative, I know people used to say, Sheryl, didn't that get you mad? I'm like, no. Someone has to come to my face and say, you're a freaking idiot, you're so stupid, they have to be that direct to me. If they're arguing in court on something, I'm not going to take it personally. Again, I'm going to look at the judge and I'll say, no, that's incorrect, and here are the facts. So don't take, and if you take things personally, you're going to be more stressed out.
Right.
And you want to be stressed out. You already have enough stress helping your client. Don't be stressed out by what someone else is doing. So don't take things personally. Don't get emotionally involved, but be passionate about what you do.
Sheryl, thanks for being a part of the program, even though you don't like the word legend, and then for the words of wisdom. We genuinely appreciate it. And I wanted to thank the attendees today. We appreciate your support. Our executive director, Julie Jones, she'll be sending you CLE information for ethics credit. As always, send us your suggestions for future programs. We're always better when we work together. We know that. We appreciate your collaboration. Anything? I'll give you the final word, Sheryl. Anything to add?
No, but if you want to call me, call me. I'm happy to talk.
Yeah, and just like a lawyer, I'll take back the final word here and just encourage everyone to have a terrific day. And thanks again, Sheryl.
Okay,
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.